Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we will be talking about the latest polls in the 2024 presidential race and looking at how the electoral map would look if you directly follow what the polls in each individual state are indicating at this point in time. Now, what you see filled in already are the states where there are zero polls from the Harris versus Trump matchup, from these individual states. All the filled in states means that there are no polls yet, because remember, this is still a pretty new race. I mean, Kamala Harris has only been the candidate for president for a month and a half about, so it is still a very new race, and a lot of pollsters haven't had the time, or with all this excitement in the race, even had the motivation to conduct polls in some of these more safer states. So with all of these safe states filled in, I mean, I gave them to, of course, how they voted in 2020, to put it simply. How we know they're going to vote in 2024, right? If they're not polled, if there are no polls from these states, it means that they are generally uncompetitive. So after the safe states, it puts Kamala Harris and Tim Walz at an advantage at 122 electoral votes. I'm sorry, California should not be on there, actually, because I just remembered. I messed up there. There are polls from California. So now Donald Trump and JD Vance are at the advantage. How much effect it has, I don't know. At 94 electoral votes, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz at 68. So with that being said, let's get into this video. We're going to just go in alphabetical order, of course, but you can just see for Alabama, for example, the last poll was conducted by the Robert F. Kennedy Jr. campaign that matched him against Trump and Biden, respectively. And before that, it was just Biden versus Trump polls. So there are no Harris versus Trump polls in Alabama. So what we will be doing is taking the average of polls, not just the latest poll, because that's useless, right? A latest poll can be a sponsor of a Democrat of one of the political parties. It could be biased towards one side, or it could just be completely inaccurate. An average of polls is a much better way to grasp where a race stands in each of these individual states. And you can just see, for example, in our first state, Arizona, Kamala Harris, they give us an average, right? They give us a timeline and an average. But anyway, with this being said, Arizona, critical battleground state, only went to Joe Biden by 0.3%. Today, Kamala Harris stands at a 0.2% lead in Arizona. So just about what Biden won the state by, but an extremely narrow win in an extremely important state. So Arizona goes to Kamala Harris in the polling average. That one is important. Even though we have a lot of states that aren't filled in, it will still come down to the battleground states. Now in California, we only have one poll that's Harris versus Trump, and we see no surprise here. Harris took a 31% win. For reference, Joe Biden won the state by 29%. So you could just see Harris is even outperforming Joe Biden, especially in some of these bluer areas. So, of course, California is a safe state for Kamala Harris. And then we have, moving on now to the state of Florida, we see in the average of polls, Donald Trump is ahead in Florida by 4.7%. So it's still, he still has a healthy margin in Florida, but it still does remain competitive. Not too long ago, Trump was at 5, so whatever, it has remained very stagnant over these past few weeks. So Florida, no improvements for either side in Florida. Now Georgia, maybe the most critical battleground, or maybe number 2 behind Pennsylvania in 2024. Georgia, extremely important in the 2024 election, was it show Kamala Harris took the lead in Georgia just a couple days ago. Today, she leads by 0.5%, such a narrow victory, while just on August 27th, which was just 5 days ago, Donald Trump was ahead by 0.7, by 0.8, a pretty good margin. Now, with a batch of new polls, Harris has taken the lead by 0.5%. That would be an expansion, a small expansion, on Joe Biden's margin in 2020. But the Democrats hang on to Georgia. That is huge for their campaign. Next up, we have the state of Illinois. We have one Harris versus Trump poll. Harris wins the state by 16%. That's about what Joe Biden won it by in the last election, 2020. Now let's move on. Let's see, to Maine, I guess. To Maine. In Maine, so Maine splits their electoral votes by congressional district and an at-large vote. So this is the at-large vote, the general election. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the Maine second congressional district vote up here, what you see. And now this is really insane. This is the second congressional district here. And yes, it's Maine. And you might, if you're not involved in this too much, you might not be that surprised, based off what you know about Maine, to see Kamala Harris ahead in the second district. So she is ahead by 5% in this one poll, and then 5% even when you include the third-party candidates. Now, let me just show you what Maine's second district voted for, or how they voted in 2020. We see that Donald Trump won by 7.4%. So the latest polls from Maine's second district, the last two, on average, they have Harris ahead by 5% when Trump won it by 7.4%. That's a 12.4% trend to the right in 4 years. Kamala Harris is doing something incredible in Maine's second district. We'll see if it holds up. Polls were similar, though, to that in 2020. So 5% margin. That is a likely margin for Harris in the second district. Now we move on to the first district. Harris is ahead by 28.5% on average. No surprise there. And then we have the at-large vote, the general election vote, where Harris is ahead by 17 and 17 when you include third-party candidates, so 17% on average. Now, Biden won by 9% in the last election. This poll is just insane for Harris. Maybe this will be the one on Election Day. If it is a Harris landslide and we look at this and say, wow, this is the only poll that actually recognized that it would be a Harris landslide, who knows? But still, probably not. But Maine's at-large vote goes to Harris by 17 points. That one's just insane. These ones are just insane in Maine. In Maryland, we have a couple polls. On average, it is 31 points for Harris. It's 32 and 30 in the two polls we have. And then we have the state of Nope, we don't need Massachusetts. There are no polls from there. Now we move on to another critical battleground state in 2024, that being Michigan. And what you see for quite a while now, Harris has kept a lead in Michigan. Today, she stands at a lead of 2.4%. So, of course, we give Harris the state of Michigan. Not much of a surprise. I think that she wins it by somewhere around there. And then we have Minnesota. They do give us an average here, thankfully. Not too long ago, it was by 9 for Harris. That was the margin. But recently, a little bit of a concerning poll came out from Survey USA that has her only up by 5, so an increasingly close race. So that reduces her margin in Minnesota down to 7.7%. But still, Biden won it by 7.1 in 2020, so she is still expanding on that Biden margin of victory. Now let's move on to the state of Mississippi if we need it. No, we don't. There are no polls from there, but we do need Missouri because there are 2 polls from Missouri. On average, it's 14 points, or 14 and a half, I guess, to be technical. So that does make it under a safe margin. Bad for Donald Trump, a likely margin state, and that's actually closer than it was in 2020 when it went to Trump by 15.4 percentage points. Now let's move on to Montana. There are 4 polls for the presidential race between Harris and Trump from Montana. We have 18 points, 14, 15, 15. So the average is about 15. We'll put it narrowly over that safe margin. Not much of a surprise there. Then we have Nebraska. Nebraska also splits their electoral votes by the at-large vote and by congressional district. In the second congressional district, which went to Joe Biden by 6.6% in the last election, we see that in the 2 latest polls between Harris and Trump, Kamala Harris has a strong lead, over 5% in both of them, so that does make it a likely margin. Likely margin for Harris. And then in the at-large vote, we have polls from, and in the latest poll, Trump is ahead by 19%. No surprises there. And then we move on to the state of Nevada, another battleground state. Harris has kept a lead for quite a while now. The last time Trump led was on August 18th, not too long ago, I guess, but, in terms of how long this Harris versus Trump race has been, it has been a strong lead in Nevada, which is surprising. I thought Nevada would have been one of her worst battleground states. However, that is not true. She's ahead in Nevada by 0.7%. So that is great for a campaign. So far, out of the 7 critical battlegrounds, the 7 core battleground states, I should say, Harris leads all of them. That's Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and Michigan. In the state of New Hampshire, Kamala Harris ahead by 6.9%. Not much of a surprise there. And then we have New Mexico. We have more polls than I thought. We have 5 polls between Harris and Trump in New Mexico. Harris +7, +11, +7, +6, +7. On average, we'll call it about 7, a little more than 7, since we have that +11 poll. But regardless, it is a likely margin state. Next up, we have New York. We have 4 polls from New York, +17, +12, +14, +11 for Harris. On average, we will call it about a 14% lead for Harris in New York, which does make it a likely state. It does get a lot closer from 2020, when it went to Biden by 23 percentage points. In North Carolina, a critical battleground state, but finally Trump takes a very important win here. He would be toast if he didn't win in North Carolina. So North Carolina, he leads by 0.4%. Not too long ago, Harris was ahead in the average. That ended on August 26th, so just a few days ago. But now Trump is ahead by 0.4 with the latest polls. Now he only won the state by 1.3 in 2020, so his margin here is actually reducing. So North Carolina votes for Trump by less than a percentage point. It's insane how many states we have that are tilt margins. We never see that when we do these polling videos. In Ohio, we have 3 polls from the state. Trump +12, +10, +9. So on average, it is just above 10. That is about where I expect it to land. And then we have Oklahoma. Of course, no polls from there. But Oregon, we have some. We have 2. And these, I didn't even know these happened. Oh, they're from July, okay. But still, Harris ahead by 5, and then by 5 in the head-to-head, it's the same pollster. In the head-to-head +5, and when you include third parties, she's ahead by 5. That should be very concerning. I don't know how true it is, but Biden won by 16, so that would be an 11-point trend to the right, which is just insane. That's kind of the Republican equivalent of the Maine poll that we looked at earlier. Now in Pennsylvania, we have an increasingly close race in these past couple of days. Harris has the lead in Pennsylvania. That is the most important part. Harris does take the lead in Pennsylvania, exactly matches Joe Biden's margin in the 2020 election of 1.2%. So that's important. Now out of of course, Pennsylvania is a critical battleground. And with that, even without Utah, Texas, even without Virginia, a blue state, Vermont, a blue state, Wisconsin, a swing state that she could win, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have won. They have 278 electoral votes right now. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance have 173. It's not even close right now. You can just see how polling is favoring Kamala Harris in this race, saying that Harris will win. Rhode Island, we have no polls. South Carolina, we have no polls. South Dakota, we have no polls. Tennessee, we have a poll. Trump +26%. That is a safe state there. And then we have Texas. We have many polls. We have a total of 6 polls. Trump leads in all of them by 9, by 8, by 5, by 3, by 5, by 7. Looks like on average it's just over 5%, or more like 6% actually. So Texas is a likely state. That's about what he won it by in the last election. In Utah, we have 2 Harris versus Trump polls. On average, Trump wins by about 28%. And then we have Vermont. We have 2 polls. Harris is ahead by 40 and 41. So obviously that's deep into the safe column. Then Virginia, we have new polls. We have a total of 5 polls from Virginia. 3 of them show Harris ahead. And then there were 2 from mid-July that, for a while, these were all we had. And in my last one of these videos, it actually gave Trump the win in the Electoral College. But now, on average, we see that Harris does have a, +3 polling average, maybe, when you include all 5 polls. So Virginia is a lean state for Kamala Harris. That does narrow up from 2020. Then we have Washington. Harris +14. Oh, I characterized it already, sorry. And then we have West Virginia. We do have a Harris versus Trump poll, surprisingly. And Trump is at by only 27%. Now, that is a lot. But look, he won it by 39 in the last election. By 39, reduced to 27. So he's losing 12 points in West Virginia. That should be extremely concerning to him. In Wisconsin, you can just see how good the state is looking for Harris, which does surprise me. I mean, earlier this month, or earlier last month, in the beginning of last month, Harris was only ahead by 1.2. Now she's ahead by 3.2. She has gained 2 percentage points. In a state Biden only won by 0.6%. So Wisconsin goes to Kamala Harris. So that wraps up this video. She wins every single battleground state besides North Carolina of the core battleground states. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all lean margins. Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, all tilt margins for her. And then North Carolina goes tilt for Donald Trump. So that puts Kamala Harris, that matches the exact map of the 2020 election, except for the fact that Maine's 2nd district, shockingly, goes blue. But that puts Harris at 304 electoral votes. Donald Trump, J.D. Vance at 234. Not even all that close. So thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe down below. We're trying to get to 10,000 subscribers before Election Day. So if you could help me out with that, that would be great. Again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.